It is 6 o'clock, so we'll call the meeting to order. Alicia, could you please do a roll call?
Yep. Lori Blargen.
Here.
Ian McDonald.
Here.
Matt Foucault.
Here.
Lacey Oster.
Here.
Bruce Blargen.
Here.
Cherie Link.
Here.
Marge Wolf.
Here.
Our district mission: together we engage, educate, and empower all learners, bridging their passions to pathways to create successful futures and positively contribute to our local and global communities. Is there a motion to approve our agenda tonight?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to our public comment. For those of you giving public comment tonight, opinions and ideas contributed by students, parents, staff, and other citizens are valuable to our school board. The board will receive such input without comment or take no action relative to any items brought forth. They may direct the district administrator to consider such an item at an appropriate place on the agenda or a subsequent meeting. The board has set aside 20 minutes for this purpose. Please limit comments to 3 minutes. Those wishing to make public comment have either messaged me or I have a red card ahead if there's anybody else that needs to fill one out. And also include, as you get up to speak, your name, address, group representative any, and the item or concern to be addressed. We'll start with Stephen.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Digala. I'm at 196th Avenue in Somerset. Regarding the decision to keep the first book under reconsideration, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, it is not only our responsibility, but our rights as parents to protect our children from materials that can preemptively manipulate and distort their developing sense of self, how they relate to others, and how they view the world. We will continue to protect them from normalizing abhorrent behavior in school content that seeks to sexualize and exploit them. Exposure to graphic material like rape, incest, drug, and alcohol abuse, as portrayed in this book, undermine the efforts of involved parents, like the majority in this town, who have made their choice to raise their children with morals and values. The books in question have no place in the hands of minors. If the graphic sexual scenes of this book were involved or included in a movie that was played in a classroom, how would you feel about the book? Would it be a great literary value? This is common sense, it's a nonpartisan issue, and we have supporters from both sides of the aisle in this community. As taxpayers, the school library is our library, and we demand more quality, age-appropriate materials for reading for our children. Only 47% of children in this district are proficient in the English and language arts standards. This is not an attractive thing to families looking for a school. Further, here's a simple question. How will these decisions you are making about these inappropriate books help or hurt our declining enrollment? How will we attract more families to this district if we cannot even trust that a common sense level of decency would be used to decide if sexually graphic material is appropriate for our children? Hear us clearly, we will hold you accountable. Parents have the primary say with their children's education and the shaping of their value system. Regarding the initial review committee, we, the parents, were shut out of the process. It should not take a 25-item convoluted rubric to understand that a girl being raped in a book has no place in the hands of our students, no matter how much literary value it brings to the table. The review committee is made up of the same people that put the books on the shelves in the first place. Again, our kids deserve better. We deserve books of literary value that are able to inspire and challenge our kids, for them to dream about their futures. Please do the right thing. Stand up for our children. Be a district that's known for upholding decency and high standards. Thank you.
Danielle?
Danielle Erickson, 62nd Street, Somerset. As a high school parent, I want to reach out to the other parents and community members who think the book review we have called for is an infringement on First Amendment rights. Let me be clear. As a college graduate of political science myself, the First Amendment is something we all agree on here. We must strive to keep an open mind on new ideas, new subject matter, and new authors. This, however, does not apply to minor children regarding explicit sexual content and obscenity. In the handbook, it says students can't wear clothing that refers to drugs, alcohol, tobacco, or sex. Yet somehow, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, which has all of these things, is a good book. I encourage everyone to look at the Citizen's Guide to U.S. Law on Obscenity and the similar guide in Wisconsin state law. At this time, the state of Maine and a handful of other states are considering bills on obscenity that will pertain to public schools only, not public libraries, not art museums, etc. Schools would no longer be exempt from providing obscene material to students in the name of education. Parents don't want federal or state government telling us what is sexually appropriate for our children. And in the same way, we don't want other parents parenting our kids. Remove the books from the school library, but still have them available to any parent who wishes their child check them out. How about those parents sign something that says the child may do so instead of the other way around? In regards to the book review committee itself, we have concerns here, and we do not believe we have an objective committee. The people who have brought these books in are on the committee, nor do we think the sources used for this review process are objective. The ALA, American Library Association, says that most of the books being removed are in the young adult category and contain storylines featuring LGBTQ+ issues, characters of color, or directly address issues of race or racism. You guys, where is the mention of explicit sexual content here? The ALA is used as a source on the book committee review for these books that we are calling out as sexually explicit, and that's all we're talking about. The ALA and its subsidiaries, which are used as guides for this book review process, are a radical, political organization. They do not believe any child of any age should be able to access any book or movie, even pornography. They do not even support library computers blocking pornography and hold that kids could view porn in the library with no objection. Clearly, this book review process is not objective and needs more scrutiny, resulting in change. A process like this is what drives families away from the district and adds to the declining enrollment and budget issues. Thank you.
Monet?
Monet Skirka, 444 Random Drive, Amory, Wisconsin. All right, from my understanding, the removal request for the book Perks of Being a Wallflower is now in the hands of the board, as the review committee has decided to keep this book in our school. In regards to the review committee, I emailed Ms. Donnelly and asked if I could be on the review committee. But because I am asking for the removal of the books, Ms. Donnelly said that would be a conflict of interest. But yet, the review committee has multiple people on it who were the ones that brought these books into our classrooms and library. That is a double standard, and if you ask me, that's the conflict of interest as well. Having read the 43 excerpts, I knew this book should not be in our school. I knew this book was grotesque, and I did not need to waste my time reading it. But I was challenged to read it, and I did, in the full content. It only made me more disgusted and disappointed in our school's decision. I don't understand how anyone needs more than those 43 pages of excerpts. Even if you only read those, someone with good standards of morals, ethics, common sense, and knows Jesus can clearly see this is not a good read for our children. In reading this book as a whole, Charlie has an English teacher mentor, deals with suicide, fitting in, friend issues, life's trials. There's cheating, sex stories, abortion, lying to parents, rape, masturbation, drugs, drinking, and more drinking. Charlie has a mental breakdown, and in the conclusion of his last letter, Charlie realizes it's okay to feel things and be who you are. At the policy meeting, the committee talked about giving our kids breathalyzers if there's any suspicion, and I'm all for it. But then you put these books in our school that normalize drinking. That seems pretty contradicting. 80% of this book is made up what most of us parents work against. We want to teach our kids in making good choices and treating others respectfully. We should raise the bar and standard for learning and not lower it. This book does not teach our kids about healthy relationships. 118 to 121. Charlie takes his sister to the abortion clinic and she gets an abortion and then lies to her parents, tells them they were at a movie at McDonald's. She doesn't even tell the father of the baby she aborted and lies to him also. 150. After Brad's dad beats the crap out of him, because he caught Patrick and Brad having sex, Brad goes back to the school and calls Patrick a faggot in front of the school. 178. Sam's boyfriend Craig cheats on her, and when Craig is confronted by his friend Peter to tell her, Craig says, "Fuck you, Peter, fuck you, you fucking bastard." 115. At one point in the dance, Patrick went to the parking lot to get stoned with his guidance counselor. That sounds like mentoring to me. My husband and I have had countless conversations about this book, and we agree it is filled with sexual behavior and stories that are disgusting, and school is not a place for this sexual content. I will let him talk on that. Remove this book from our school and replace it with a better choice. It's not a wonder why parents are pulling their kids out of public schools at an alarming rate.
Ryan?
Ryan Eskerka, 444 Random Drive, Amory, Wisconsin, on the book Perks of Being a Wildflower. This book's normalization of bad sexual behavior. 21, Charlie states, "I have a weird dream. I was with Sam and we were both naked and her legs were spread over the side of the couch." 21, Charlie says, "Do you know what masturbation is?" "I think you probably do because you're older than me, but just in case I'll tell you, masturbation is when you rub your genitals until you have an orgasm." I didn't know the school was in the business of teaching and promoting masturbation. 44. Brad and Patrick went into Patrick's room. They had sex for the first time. I don't want to go into details about it, it's pretty private stuff, but I would say Brad assumed the role in a girl in terms of where to put things. I think that's pretty important to tell you. When they were finished, Brad started to cry hard. He had been drinking a lot and getting really stoned. Now the rape scene. I can't get this disgusting content out of my head. Page 30. Finally, she stopped crying because he put his penis in her mouth. I don't think you can cry in that position. Now parents with young ladies, imagine this happening to your child. Our school should be ashamed for allowing this book into the school. 157, 158. Charlie and Patrick reminisce about stories of their classmates and laugh over a bottle of wine. Lily and Parker, naked on a putting green, forgot their condoms, so they decided to use a plastic sandwich baggie and do it doggy style. 159. Carl Birds gets drunk at a party that he tried to fuck the host's dog. Page 160. Sheila, who allegedly masturbated with a hot dog, had to go to the emergency room. Absolutely sick content. If this book is up to your standards and you think it is a good read that helps kids get through high school, then our standards as a school are very, very low. This book normalizes drinking, drugging, sexual behavior in high school setting. And if you are looking at this book as a whole, please tell me how all this content we just read becomes null and void. There are 1,000 books to choose from, and this is the one you choose to be in our kids' school. The book, In Order to Live, is a testimony of a young girl with a very tough childhood, rape, poverty, hardship, and growing into a young woman. Despite all the trials and tragedies, you can read this book without normalizing sexual behavior, drinking, and drugs. You can still feel her pain and triumph without reading sexual explicit content. This book is not in our library. So I'm guessing you're not banning this book, but simply you just didn't choose it to be in the school. So let me be clear. We are not banning this book. We are asking you to remove it from our school. And anyone is welcome to buy it or check it out at the public library. Please make the right choice and not allow this garbage in our schools.
Thank you.
DJ? Is it DJ or JJ?
TJ.
JJ. Just go ahead.
I'm going to play a short clip of what one smart town did in this situation. I'm hoping you can hear it, and if not, it's short enough, I will tell you what it says.
That your educators, Earl, members of the board, my name is Craig Schubert, the mayor of this city. It has come to my attention that your educators are distributing essentially what is child pornography in the classroom. I've spoken to a judge this evening. She's already confirmed that. So I'm going to give you a simple choice. You either choose to resign from this Board of Education, or you will be charged. Thank you.
So to continue on with that, I just want to say that this was addressed by a lot of these parents up here months ago, but it was brought to your attention. About 33 books is what I'm hearing. And I guess you didn't want the community to know before the voting for your referendum. You knew if the parents of this town knew you were allowing, because now it's to the point of allowing the books in, on pornography, drugs, incest, pedophilia, rape, violent rape, etc., that your referendum would never pass. So we just pacified the parents, and then now we're dealing with this. So, the children are not your children. They're our children, our grandchildren. Know that we know that you're okay with grooming our children now. I will be going to the Somerset Police Department and asking them to open an investigation into each member of the book committee of the school, and to how each book got into our school, who donated them, who approved them, and who is still approving pornography, rape, incest, and drugs in our school. Because this is all of our schools, not just the people up above. So then I'll be going to the Sheriff's Office of St. Croix County and requesting an investigation be opened there on the same people and the same committees and the school. Then I'll be contacting the State of Wisconsin Police Department and requesting an open investigation be opened there. Lori, it'd be really nice if you could pay attention to what all of us parents are saying.
I'm taking notes.
Okay. Requesting an investigation be opened there on the same people, school, and committees. We will start peacefully protesting and showing this town and village what you are allowing in our children's lives and heart and school.
20 seconds.
Maybe the parents will start homeschooling like parents are doing around the world. This isn't in the US, this is all over. You can find videos like this all over the place. With you allowing this criminal behavior in indoctrinating our children, because that's what's happening. Then you might lose funding and money for your pet projects. Thank you.
Shirley?
I'm gonna switch gears, I'm not here to talk about the books. I'm Sherry Walters, I'm at 1944 62nd Street in Somerset. I'm here to talk about the Lottie Point system calculation change for especially how it's affecting our senior class. My son Jordan Walters will be graduating from Somerset High School in a few weeks. I'm here tonight to share my disappointment with the school on how the Lottie Point rules for graduating with honors changed for his class right before their senior year. When he entered SHS in 2019, the Lottie Point system was explained to us, and we were given a list of classes that would earn Lottie points, which included the honors classes. In February of 2022, which was just last year, we had his junior conference with the counselor, and again, we were given the same Lottie point list. I've given you a handout which outlines his Lottie points and shows all the honors classes he took to earn points towards his goal of summa cum laude. As you can see, the total is 27 points. We discussed the fact that he was on track to graduate with the highest honor of summa cum laude. In July of 2022, the system was revised and all of the honors courses were removed, and his point total was now reduced to 19 points, which dropped him from summa cum laude to magna cum laude. There was no notification about this change. Something similar happened last year with the change that was made to the qualification for the Celebration of Excellence banquet, which was not communicated to the seniors, and when we questioned it, we were told there's just too many of them. Again, with the Laude point change, there has been no reason given for this other than we recalculated all seniors in the new system. One can only assume that, again, there's just too many. But shouldn't too many honors graduates be something to celebrate? I respect the fact that the school district can make changes to a policy, however, it should not directly impact students right before their senior year. His first semester schedule for senior year had already been set, so there wasn't time to make changes to even earn more points. Also, as you can see from his list, he's taken more difficult courses: CIS history, CIS psychology, pre-calc, AP Lang, AP calculus. If a change like this is going to be implemented, it should be for the incoming freshman class so that they can begin their class planning according to the new Laude point system and the new rules, not for upperclassmen who have made their class choices based on the original Laude point system that they were using right up to their senior year. So while the color of the cord that hangs around his neck at graduation doesn't define him, I respectfully ask that this policy change be reconsidered for the senior class and use the original Laude point scale, because it's simply not fair to my son and the rest of his class who took these honors classes to earn the Laude points, only to have the rules change and have points stripped away right before they graduate. It's the right thing to do for these kids, and I ask that you'll consider that and make that change for them. Thank you for your time.
Becky?
I'm Becky Leakey. I live at 1010 Spring Street in Somerset. I had 2 children that went through the Somerset school system and graduated. And I'm here this evening to talk about censorship and the banning of books in public schools. Books are inseparable from ideas. When you ban a book, you censor an idea. Some people believe that certain books should be banned from public schools because they contain offensive language or controversial and sensitive ideas. But as Jodi Picoult says, there is nothing wrong with a parent deciding a certain book is not right for her child. There is a colossal problem with a parent deciding that therefore no child should be able to read that book. Instead of banning books, we should encourage open discussion and critical thinking about controversial topics. Books can provide a safe environment in which to explore those difficult ideas. Books are certainly safer than cell phones. Again, Jodi Picoult says, if you're afraid that reading a book might change somebody's thinking, then you are not afraid of books, you're afraid of thinking. Banning books and banning ideas can create a false sense of reality for children. The reality of language, sex, and violence in literature is that it exists in our world. By shielding children from these ideas, we are not preparing them for the real world, or the SATs, for that matter. Our students here in Somerset will need to compete in a world they will be woefully unprepared for if you limit their ideas. The First Amendment to the United States Constitution protects the freedom of speech, and litigation regarding censoring books has made its way all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, most notably in Island Trees School District versus Pico in 1982. The Supreme Court ultimately ruled, and I quote, "Local school boards may not remove books from school library shelves simply because they dislike the ideas contained in those books." During my school years, I read many books that have been on the banned book list at one time or another because they were on my school library shelves. The thing is, though, that many of those books have survived the censors and have gone on to become literary greats. Some have won literary awards like the Pulitzer Prize. Some have become favorite classics. Books like To Kill a Mockingbird, Lord of the Flies, Call of the Wild, Animal Farm, A Bridge to Terabithia, on and on. Tell me, how do you know that you won't be censoring a future classic or an award winner? Judy Blume says it so well again. It's not just the books under fire now that worry me. It's the books that will never be written, the books that will never be read, and all due to the fear of censorship. And as always, our young people are the real losers. Thank you.
My name is Erica Johnson. I live at 1999 County Road C. My kid is a graduate from here. And I just wanted to talk, and I'm kind of coming off the cuff for this, but I do believe that all those parents have right to limit their kids' access to it. What I don't believe is that they have a right to limit all access to it. See, the thing is in a free society, you have to deal with people of many different backgrounds and beliefs and different sexual orientation and sexual ideologies. You have to deal with all these different ideas. And the thing about it is, representation matters. And these kids, these things happen to them. Rape, incest, and all that stuff. And having a protagonist to show you that you're going to be okay on the other side of that experience is important for those people. And also it's important for kids to realize that bad things do happen to other people. So that they can see that maybe, you know, like Water for Elephants. It's funny that they take some like little sexually explicit passages out of it, but they don't ever talk about the brutality of the antagonist in that book and the horribleness of what his actions were. That's not why they're banning it. They're banning it because they're talking about some guy's penis. Great. It's not pornographic. Brutality and the murder of people should be more in line with that, right? Opposed to awkward sexual experience. But there's a reason for that. You can learn from these experiences. This rape was not presented in a good light, right? You can learn from these. People's experiences and representation in literature definitely matters. That's it.
Okay, moving on from our public comment. If I didn't forget anybody. Moving on to our election of school board officials. It is that time of year. Our board has not changed, but yearly we look at the officials for president, vice president, clerk, and treasurer. So maybe I'll kind of hand it over to you,
Sure,
Shannon.
you bet. Yeah, so as Lacey said, that time of year we do board reorganization. So Alicia and I have prepared, I would say formal but informal documents in terms of kind of voting, etc. So we will start with president, we'll move our way to vice president, clerk, and then treasurer. So my understanding is we need to kind of start by opening up the floor in terms of someone being nominated in terms of presidency, and then we'll kind of go from there, but we'll at least start with taking nominations for board president.
I'll nominate Lacey Foster for president.
Second.
Any other nominations for board president? Going once, going twice. Well, I'm not sure we have a need to necessarily go through and do our paper voting. Do we feel comfortable with that, since she's the only one being nominated? Or would you prefer to go through and vote?
I think we have to.
I'm seeing,
Does policy speak to that at all?
I will make a motion that we cast
Thank
a
you.
unanimous vote for Lacey.
Second.
I think Ian was a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, congratulations. So Lacey is the board president. All right, we move on to vice president. We're taking nominations for vice president.
I nominate Bruce.
I'll second.
Okay,
I will nominate Matt.
Cherie with the nomination. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have Bruce and Matt. Any other nominations for vice president? All right, we get to use your handy dandy.
Super fancy.
And please hold your applause.
Thanks, Trish.
Thank you.
He's good. There you go. Fold them in half. Shuffle them up. Alicia can watch me while we open these. So we've got one for Bruce, one for Matt, a second for Matt, a third for Matt, fourth for Matt, second for Bruce, third for Bruce. So Matt has 4, Bruce has 3. So Matt will be our vice president. We should probably do a motion, huh? Let's. Can we make a motion for Matt to be vice president?
Motion? I don't think we have to.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Because
Yeah, we're good, I
I
think.
thought I read differently, but okay. If this is all you want to do, no problem. All right. Moving on to board clerk. Taking nominations for board clerk.
I'll nominate Cherie.
I'll second.
Who seconded? Ian? Am I moving too fast?
No, well, I'll get that from you
Okay.
later, maybe. How about that?
All right, hang on. Okay, any other nominations for board clerk? Going once, going twice? Congratulations, you are board clerk. All right. Moving on to treasurer.
I will nominate Bruce.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any other nominations for board treasurer? Going once, going twice. And congratulations, Bruce. Okay, so moving forward, we have Lacey Oster as president, Matt Foucault vice president, Cherie as board clerk, and Bruce as board treasurer. Congratulations to you all. Exciting. Okay.
Well, that changed a lot. So looking at appointing different policy committee members, we have to look at, or I should say different committee members. So we have our policy committee and a delegate for the CISA 11 convention, and then also the Somerset Memorial Scholarship representative. So last year we kind of did this the meeting after, but I think we can just kind of look through this now. Are there volunteers or people that would like to either get on our policy committee or continue their time on the policy committee?
Continue with the policy committee.
I'd like to either appoint or nominate or ask Lori to rejoin the policy committee.
I think appoint is a good word.
Lori, are you interested in that?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'll be on the policy committee.
I also wanted to ask Marge to join it too. She did a good job when she was on before, so.
Okay, so Ian, Lori, Marge? Is everybody good with that?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you for some switches there. That's a lot of work, and it's kind of nice to get some different people in and out. Then with our CISA 11 delegate, is there currently, it is Cherie. Cherie, if you're still interested, or if there's somebody else that is interested in that, being a delegate?
I would be interested.
Is everybody okay with that? Is there anybody else that's really fighting for that job? Okay,
Thank you, Sheree.
thank you. And then we have our Somerset Memorial Scholarship representative, who's currently Lori. Lori, if you're still interested, or if somebody else is interested in that position.
I'm still interested. Is there anybody else who would like to do it?
I think you're doing a good job.
It's you, Lori, if you're okay with that.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, well, that was easy too. Moving on. We will go to our superintendent update.
Awesome, all right, so my first couple should be pretty quick. Just wanted to circle back to commencement. Wanted to kind of wait until we did the reorganization. So Lacey as board president, hoping you're okay with coming back and speaking at commencement like you did last year, of a minute or two, just roughly. And then looking for 2 board members to help kind of be on stage, help distribute diplomas, kind of formally greeting graduates when they come up on the stage. Any more than 2, the stage gets pretty busy and pretty full. We do have some spaces where board members can also stand kind of at on the tail end when kids are coming down after receiving their diploma to shake hands, and we can kind of talk about that. But wanting to know if there are 2 people in particular that are interested in specifically being up on stage to kind of handshake and help distribute diplomas if needed.
Could you give that date again, Shannon? Sorry.
May 21,
At 1 o'clock,
it's a
right?
Sunday at 1 o'clock. So I'm hearing, oh, Cherie, you're looking at your calendar maybe.
I'm available unless there's people who would prefer
Okay.
to do it.
I'm available.
Okay.
Ian, your son's not a senior, right? He's a junior?
Next year.
Okay.
Okay. And as always, we'll have some designated spots for board members as well, and we can talk about that just as it gets closer, but we're trying to finalize the program, so we wanted to kind of finalize this part tonight, so. Okay, so referendum 2023, so we're still in the process of kind of putting together what the RFP process will look like. Doing an RFP for both architect and construction manager is a bit of a undertaking. So we're gathering some examples from some other schools that have recently done basically the exact same thing, looking at our RFP process from last time. So we're hoping within the next week or so that we'll be able to finalize that process and kind of officially get moving. This part is always kind of slow as we're trying to gather different samples and things like that, but lots kind of happening internally here as we work to kind of get that moving, because this is always, like I said, kind of the slow part. So once we finally get that moving and grooving, hopefully being able to see a little bit quicker progress with things. But that's kind of where we are with the referendum. So letter C, attached to the board agenda, you will see a memo regarding for discussion and hopefully action. My recommendation, really kind of between Jody and I, but recommendation for forgiveness for snow days. So I'm sure I don't have to remind you that we've had an unprecedented number of inclement weather days this year. You know, it's not atypical for around this time of year to have a discussion at the board level if there have been additional inclement weather days to talk about potentially forgiving some days for staff. So what I'm asking you through this memo to consider, so we had 4 total days for staff that we would have to look at potential forgiveness. June 5th right now for us is technically a half day, so I would like to extend that to a full day, which means my formal recommendation would be forgiveness for 3.5 days for staff. So those were days that before we started implementing virtual instruction, as some of these days kind of snuck up on us, and before we were kind of officially ready to put that into play, those were days that were contracted days. I would not go so far as say that teachers and staff weren't working those days, because I could certainly verify in lots of ways that was true, but our formal virtual instruction had not started yet. So if we move June 5th to a full day for staff, that brings us down to 3.5 days. There's some information there, hopefully you looked at it already, just in terms of what we are allowed to do via the handbook. Again, in looking at, because we had lots of discussion about this administratively, looking at maybe what some options might be, but we get a little anxious about extending additional work days that week of June 5th, because summer school starts that following Monday. And for many, many staff, there's a significant amount of work that has to be done to get prepared for summer school starting that Monday. We have our JK here that is moving to the elementary school, and that will take significant, kind of manpower to happen. And we have a couple teachers in the elementary school that are also moving classrooms. So kind of all of that we'd like to have about as ready as can be for that first day of summer school. We know lots of staff will be here, that second half of the week of June 5th anyway, doing some of these things. But in terms of kind of official contract days, our recommendation was that we ask the board to forgive 3.5 days. Kind of a long explanation to get to what my memo said, but questions?
And that doesn't make any difference on the state?
No, so we've met all of our instructional minutes, so we're good there. We don't have to add any time for students. This is really just about the contractual piece. Yep.
And are you looking for possible action on this?
I would love action on this, yes.
My opinion is at this point to tell staff that they need to work an extra 3.5 days in June when it's just over a month away.
Yeah.
I think that's, as far as planning, in my opinion, we should have discussed it months ago if we were gonna add that. So I would make a motion to approve that we allow the forgiveness of 3.5 snow days versus requiring staff to make up those days.
And I should maybe clarify too, it was intentional that I didn't bring this any sooner, because frankly, I was not all that convinced that we were out of the woods for additional inclement weather days. But you're right, the timing of it makes it hard. But the way that our winter has gone, I didn't want to have to come back, more than once of having this discussion, so.
It was snowing like a week ago, so.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Awesome, thank you. So my last item is just giving a little bit of information publicly about the book challenge. So wanted to kind of let people know that tomorrow on our website, we will have a Google site go live with all of the information that people are asking about and that I'm getting a lot of questions about, emails, phone calls, those kinds of things, on both sides of the issue of what are the books, what's the process, what is the timeline, can I see the decision letter, those kinds of things, because these things are all very public. So we've been spending a lot of time internally creating a site that will be kind of a one-stop shop for anyone and everyone to, there'll be kind of like where we had referendum 2023 on our front page. It'll say something like book challenge 2023 that you can click on, and that will be where all the information is housed. As we're updating, as we move through the process, everything will be linked there. There's multiple things linked there already, not only from the initial challenge when it was brought in February, but all the way up to kind of present time with the first decision of the first book that we've done so far. And just a couple things I want to mention. Due to the volume of books that were a part of this challenge, this is going to take a couple years to complete. Due to the process that we're using and ensuring that committee members are reading all of the books, analyzing best practice, analyzing what other districts have done, and to try to make this more manageable, we're going to be kind of batching the books. So basically between now and August, the committee is going to read 3 books. So the next time that I will communicate with the petitioners that brought the challenge regarding any decisions about a book would be August. Because we are finding the amount of time and manpower and resources that we're putting into this on a daily basis is not manageable for what we have now to be 26 books left. We put in over 120 hours on this topic already, and very worthwhile and lots of great things to talk about. And I think as a district, there's lots of opportunities to help us grow. But just from a manpower standpoint, we have to break this down into something that's going to be more manageable. So you'll be able to see, as I said, when this goes live tomorrow, kind of the way that we're going to chunk this. There really isn't a specific order to the books. Just really finding a way to be able to engage in a process that is meaningful and doing our due diligence, but also recognizing that there's lots of things happening in the district on a daily basis besides this book challenge. So trying to kind of manage the time that we're spending on this right now, again, just to make it a little bit more manageable and be able to balance it better with all the other things that we have happening in the district at this time. So if people have questions about the Google site when that goes live at some point tomorrow, I don't exactly know when, feel free to let me know. The idea is to make this as transparent as possible. I'm asking for some grace for our community members because we haven't done this before. There isn't a playbook for this. We haven't had anything, to my knowledge, in the district come forward like this, so we're doing the best that we can. Perfect, probably not, so we're trying to make some changes as we go to help make sure that we're providing as much information as possible and the documentation, because it's not a secret. And also making sure that we are doing everything we need to according to what the policy states right now. At the policy committee meeting, we had some good, I would say, short discussion about the specific policy that's guiding this. And I was very transparent in that meeting that I think there are some opportunities to strengthen that policy all the way from the committee makeup to outlining a little bit more specifically the process for the committee to use, although we've been able to kind of develop that now, and the process for the board to use, which I know you guys are going to engage in some discussion tonight. So it's certainly not perfect. You know, I also kind of encourage people to really kind of think about, you know, no matter where you land on this issue, on whatever side, being really diligent about what you're putting on social media. It's really strong language to call our staff members pedophiles and groomers, threatening to show up at people's houses, you know, those kinds of things, personal threats. I am all about, let's have open dialogue, you know, let's honor where everybody is on this issue, but really being mindful of how that's impacting the day-to-day operations from an educational standpoint, specifically in that high school. I think it's worth talking about, I think it's worth thinking about, and we're gonna just do the best we can. As I said, these policies are designed for 1 or 2 books, not 33. So we're kind of moving through this a little bit methodically, again, trying to do the best that we can to honor the process. I have no idea what's gonna happen with the next 26 books, but we're going one by one to do the best that we can, and that's all that we're trying to do. So if people have questions, please feel free to reach out. I have had some really good meetings with people on both sides of the issue. It's important for me to kind of hear, again, where people are coming from, but I think also everyone being open to the fact that this is no longer just a school topic, this is a community topic, as you've seen at our last couple public comments as well, and those can be good things. We can also disagree on things, but still have it look respectable and still have it be kind and still have it be, it's okay that you and I disagree, not me specifically, but disagree on an issue without posting some of the things that keep posting on social media, because I don't care about what's written about me, but the things that are being said about our staff in that building have to stop. So tomorrow, Google site going live. If people have questions, let me know. And I think those are my topics.
So Shannon, with that
Yep.
Google site, will the information that goes out, like why those books were coming back to us, is all of that gonna be on there? Or
Yep,
is
so
just
we call those decision letters, basically, right? So once a decision is made, either to keep a book in the library or to potentially remove it, or lots of districts are finding middle ground, which seem to be a really good place to be, which is a place that I would love to be able to go, in terms of, you know, coding systems, things that we can put in our own system with Infinite Campus, stickers you can put on books, and there's lots of ways to kind of help open up that dialogue a little bit more. But for now, yes, any of those letters will be posted on there that people can see.
And do you have any other like information exactly to what you said? Like that was kind of back to even one of the you know, the public comment, like remover, like wish to check out, you know, any of those other processes where they've met middle ground. I would just be, you know, interested
Yeah,
to hear
I'm-
some of those pieces.
I'm happy to share it. Yep, yep.
Is it appropriate or inappropriate to also include the rubric that the committee?
That's on there.
It is,
Mhm.
thank you.
Yep.
And then does that, sorry, one more question. Does
Nope.
that talk, so you're saying 26 books, but it started with 33. Currently,
Yep,
there's
so
only
5
one
of
that
them
came
met
to
the
us.
criteria for being weeded out of the library, which is a natural process we do every year. Then we've done 1 book so far, and now we're starting on kind of the next batch, which will be a batch of 3.
Okay.
So,
Any other questions for Shannon? Okay, then moving on to our end of the Library Book Challenge appeal process. Very much kind of piggybacking what Shannon is saying. For us, this is the first book that's come to us from an appeal. And per policy, there's not a lot of, it says it comes to us, but there's not a full list of how we go about this, the process that we use. So we need to have that conversation as far as what are our next steps as a board, because right now we do have a book that has come to us for appeal, and per our policy, we make that next decision. So Shannon did send out a book review process that was given with some guiding principles for board review from Trevor and the review and appeal process at the board level. I guess after as a board, we've had a time to look at that. I'm curious from input from you, the process we want to go through, also the timeline of that, because I think that's important to, that's some of the emails that I'm getting as far as what is our timeline, what is our process. So that's our next step.
Does the rubric that you guys, the committee used, how does it relate to these guiding principles for board review that are listed here from Trevor? There's some point, resources to support enrich curriculum.
yep, they're
Does your
identical.
rubric follow that?
They're identical.
They're
So
identical.
what is in there is directly from the policy. And what we use in the rubric is from the policy, and then our library criteria selection information. I can send it to you. I mean, it's,
So,
I'm
but
happy to send you.
are there notes, or will anybody from the committee or you speak to what your opinions were to each of these bullet points?
So in the decision letter, there's information. It doesn't necessarily speak to each bullet point, but it gives you an overview of the discussion of the committee and why the committee decided the way that they did.
Okay.
Yep.
I found it really interesting in Trevor's notes that he said there's no fundamental legal right for parents or community members to challenge resources. So does that mean if we had not adopted this policy?
Correct. Mm-hmm. Yep, that's my interpretation of it. Mm-hmm.
It's also common though that most schools and even libraries have a policy that
Well,
books can
we
be appealed,
didn't
right?
until November of 2022.
Yeah.
We never had this policy.
And Chris has stated that more and more schools, he has found, didn't have this policy at all, but because this topic is coming up a lot, that now more and more schools are adopting it, or some version of it.
I do find one part here a little bit concerning, number 4, under the review and appeal process. It talks about, in general, it should be unnecessary for the school board or designee to read through all the actual materials. I would just urge us as a board, if we're gonna review a book that our community is saying keep or get rid of, I hope that we could all review it as thoroughly as possible. I've already read this one complete, front to back, because if I'm gonna offer any opinions, I wanna be able to speak to it, so.
Well, when we look at what Trevor says in this document, though, this is how I understand it, so Shannon, if you have more information from Trevor, please let us know. But my understanding from reading this information is not that we are reading the book or offering an opinion on the book. It's ensuring that our review committee followed the process. Is that correct?
Yes, so Trevor's take, which you can either adopt or not in terms of a board, his take was that the role of the board is to ensure process. That the role of the board would not necessarily be to say, keep it or take it out. That you would review all of the written information that would be submitted to you from the appeal or from the initial challenge, and that as a board, you would simply read through the information and be familiar with the policy to know, was the policy followed, yes or no. So it was procedural versus opinion-based of, I believe the book should stay or go, right? So in talking to him, that came from the work that he's done with other districts. I want to be clear, it does not mean that is how this board has to function, but this was a place to at least start to give you some dialogue of, as he's working with multiple schools that are going through this, that has been the guidance that he has landed on for not only, I would say, the legal aspect of it, but in his opinion, and he has that in here, that as board members, again, his opinion, that you wouldn't necessarily have the same educational background as educators who are making the recommendation or the decision. I am not saying that's yes or no, I agree or disagree, saying that was his interpretation of it, and that was this is the guidance that he's providing schools. So.
No, there's a sentence in the first paragraph under the heading, review and appeal process at the board level. It's on this, well, does everybody have it printed? Yep. Okay. It is not the intent of the school board to substitute its own judgment for that of its educational experts. Rather, the school board serves as the appeals body to ensure that appropriate processes were followed and that there were no clear errors in the process or determination.
I think one thing to note too, and this came up in the policy committee meeting, that you know, in almost every district, if you line them up, everyone has a slightly different process for it, right? There is no perfect way that this is being done. There are many districts where the board is not involved at all, that there's a committee and the committee makes a recommendation. If there's an appeal, it goes to the superintendent and the superintendent makes a decision one way or the other, and that's it. The board's not even involved. Other districts, the board is heavily involved, and you know, our current policy obviously indicates that the board makes the final decision, but it's all over the board in terms of even just other districts I've talked to. You know, you do a quick Google search, you can see there's 1,000 ways that you can attack this. So this was, at least from a legal standpoint and mitigating risk to the district, this was the place that I wanted you to start. And then obviously where you go from here is certainly up to you, but.
So the review committee is made up of only educational experts, right?
Yeah, so in our policy, there is nothing that indicates anything about community or parents.
So did they agree unanimously to return the book?
There was consensus. 6-1.
Okay.
Yep. That's 7, right? 7. I had to think for a minute. Yeah.
So there's two different thought processes among educators of what should or shouldn't be returned to the library?
I don't know, I mean, I guess we need to decide what you want this conversation to be, because I don't know how deep we want to start going into that, because his recommendation is it's not a hearing, right? It's
Right.
not where I'm explaining or one group is explaining, it's literally you get the information.
Yep.
I am happy to share with you anything and everything, but to me, that's a little bit different pathway than what you're kind of talking about right here, so.
I just think for me to sit here and say, yeah, we followed the process, not ever reading the book, knowing nothing about it, just taking your document, you know, as it's written, I want to know, like, these principles are here. I want to know what does the committee say about each
Right.
one of these? Because if you're not speaking to it, then how do I know there was a thorough review? And that's why I say to read the book and actually know. I understand that we don't make a decision on whether the book stays or goes. I'm tracking. But for me, just to say, yes, the committee made the right decision, if I don't have any information other than your letter, I don't think I can make that decision.
But you said you would be providing the rubric as well. And I think that would indicate, and you said in the rubric that each of these criteria are listed.
I think the hard part for this right now is that you guys don't have any information, which was purposeful.
Right.
The idea is that the board comes into this completely unbiased, completely not knowing anything about the issue, not having conversations with the petitioners, that you are like as blank slate as possible, right? That ship has sailed. I mean, it is what it is, for this book in particular. So I think, right, the hard part is it's hard to visualize this stuff because you don't have anything yet. You know what I mean? And so for me, I will follow whatever process you guys decide as a board. At this point now, it is your discussion in terms of how do you want to proceed, because it's not just one book, it's 26 more books, right? And so this becomes an important discussion of what's the process going to be moving forward, right? Forget Perks of Being a Wallflower for a minute. I mean, it wouldn't matter what book it is. It's what process are you going to be comfortable with as a board when you get appeals, right?
And I think getting all the written documentation so we can verify that our policy procedure has been followed is what we need. And I would like for part of that written documentation to be the completed rubric that the review committee used to make their decision. And I think that would address what Matt is asking for.
Yeah, I think, you know, we sit here as elected community members. I think our voice does matter. You know, there's two different sides to every one of these books that are going to speak here. And yeah, I think if I'm going to sit here and be asked to review the process, then I should have as much information as possible. And if I want to read the book, I feel like I should, because I feel like I should be able to compare it to your rubric. Yeah, I guess that's my opinion. I want to have as much information on the book as I can, because I am elected by people from both sides. And I want to be sure that I'm doing right for them.
So the books that are in question have very specific themes to them. And what I'm hearing is, as a general whole of the feeling of that book is what is making the challenge come forward. Do we have books that fill the void of those same topics that can help a child who's learning through this, whatever might be happening in their life, that speak to those same topics, that are not controversial? Are these the only books that we can have in the library that fill that bucket?
I think, Cherie, that people can find controversy in every book if they so choose. Except for maybe the Grouchy Ladybug. And even that's a question.
I think there's two kind of there's one area in this, what Trevor wrote, is that you should not just look at excerpts. And then the part that you had said, that it's not necessary to read the whole book.
At the board level.
At the board level. But I think also what Shannon's saying, we're kind of past that part of us coming into this, not biased, because we've had public comment, and we've had discussion, you know, there's been more, because this is the first time that this is the first time we're going through this process. So unfortunately, I feel like this first book is gonna be kind of a learning process for us as far as how we're gonna handle this and how we're gonna go forward. I really like the idea of this next, go ahead, doing it more in a batch of 3 versus having to go through, I mean, it's really kind of at the same rate, it's 4 months, you know, a book a month almost, a little bit more, but, or less. But I think that it sounds like it's more conducive to the committee members, and I think it's gonna be more conducive to us too, going through this process, not, you know, monthly, but kind of having a batch every so often. I guess, I think all of the things that Trevor, I find this really helpful that he put together, the guiding principles and the review and appeal process, so, I mean, I'm in favor of kind of using these pieces to go forward, and I would say at this point, because of where we're at, we've heard so many excerpts where I guess I'm kind of like with Matt, where now I feel like I do need to read the whole book, because otherwise I would be biased to just excerpts, if that makes sense.
Sure.
I know that it says we don't have to, but I feel at this point.
It doesn't say that you can't.
Right. So I guess too, as a board, as far as a timeline, if we are comfortable putting this, if we feel as though there's enough time as us as a board to have ourselves prepared for our next meeting, or if you would like more than 2 weeks to be prepared for that process of looking at this book.
Well, Shannon, will you provide that rubric to us in person, or do I have to just go to the website? Like, will there be a chance for me to ask questions?
Well, I think this depends on how you want to do this. So asking questions would turn this into a hearing, where each side would basically get up and present evidence and those kinds of things. So that's what I think you guys have to decide, if that's the process that you want to use. Because if you want to ask questions, which again, you know, you guys obviously need to decide that, then you have to provide, right?
Well, it does say that we can send a reconsideration request back.
Sure.
And I think if there were questions, I mean, would that be the process?
I wouldn't think of it as a hearing. I simply think if you as the committee designee decided the book stays, and it comes to us in an appeal, I'd like to hear your opinion. I'm not asking for there's 2 sides, but I'd like to hear you speak to it. I mean, if you put your name on it, explain to me why.
Isn't the opinion in the...
So it is, and I want to be clear, like,
decision
I'm not individually making these decisions.
Oh, no, I know.
Which I know. I think that seems to be some confusion on social media, that, I mean, this is I would say a lengthy committee discussion and committee decision, right? So I do think it is, if you're asking for this to happen in person, I think that's a different vibe, because now to me, I would use the word hearing, because now you're asking for further evidence to be presented on both sides. Again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong or good or bad, but I think it's.
Well, I guess I would need to see the rubric then. Maybe it's completely spelled out and I don't need to hear it first.
Yeah.
I guess I would need to see it first.
I'll go ahead, Bruce.
I think we have to decide if we're using these bullet points in this numbered list, and that's what we're evaluating on, I think tonight. I think that's important, because if we leave and say, well, we need to wait for this rubric, and we don't feel that these bullets are everything we need, because again, I guess, you know, Lee's sitting in here tonight. We have a helicopter, okay? As a helicopter person, I don't choose, put books in or out, but I make sure that these were adhered to. So again, I think, you know, reading the book, I don't have any problem with that. I think it's probably a good idea just to get some context clues of maybe, you know, the committee's responses. But I think what we're here tonight is trying to figure out if these are the bullets and the process we want to use, and then when that rubric comes out, we say, all right, did it follow here? And when yes or no, and if it didn't, then I think there is hey, we need to see addressed. I think even it says in here, if there's things that need to be addressed, hey, we didn't see this or this or this addressed, would it be right to send it back to the committee to address those
Yeah.
3 different categories that weren't, and then we get the response and say, okay, everything's been followed, everything's been considered. That's just where I'm at, is I think that's what we're deciding, and I don't think we're taking the rubric to decide. I think we're deciding how we're gonna look at that rubric. That's just my take.
And
So-
you're saying that these guiding principles were done on the rubric, so then it's our job then to look at that piece to make sure that those processes were
And
followed
the-
or not followed.
And that these are the ones we wanna use, I think, or if there's different, right? Or we could add or take away. I know this is Trevor's,
100%.
but I think,
I mean,
are there other things we wanna,
because
I
it's
don't
not
know
spelled
why we
out,
would when that's what we have in our policy though.
yeah.
I'm not.
So one of the things we're not addressing though at all, you know, the third bullet point in this is that it should be appropriate for the subject area and for the age. Well, when you're talking a 14-year-old versus an 18-year-old, that's a huge difference in maturity.
Isn't that what the committee already did though?
Yeah. And I think this is where
So-
you're missing information right now through no fault of your own. Like, that question is a good question. I have the answer to it. It's in all the information that you guys don't have yet. You know what I mean? And so whether you read it and agree or disagree, that's a whole nother piece, right? But yes, that has been considered by the committee, absolutely. So again, I urge you to be careful about diving too deep into like this specific book right now versus like figuring out what do you want to walk out of here as a group needing for this next step.
So I was under the impression that tonight we were gonna come back and look at this. And then we would come back to our next meeting as a, yes, these are the steps you wanna approve. And then we could look at the specific book in question, my understanding. And I guess we're gonna have the information tomorrow on that book, so maybe it's kinda, there might be some things that get added or taken away from this after your committee response or your rubric is back to us. Possibly just because we're not gonna make a decision, unless we decide tonight, yeah, this is what we wanna follow. For sure, or if we wanna wait till.
But Shannon,
the
you're
next
already
meeting.
saying this was the criteria you used. The ones that are listed here is how you went about with the supporting
This was
curriculum.
one piece of the puzzle.
Okay.
Yes.
So really, there's nothing that, I mean, is there anything that's standing out to us that needs to be addressed that's not addressed in those bullet points?
Well, when you're talking about bullet points, are you I'm looking at the review and appeal process at the board level, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I was up on the guiding principles for board review.
On the
If
first
there was
page.
anything else, sorry, I started.
I don't, because these are exactly what's in our policy.
And as Cherie's stating, for age, some of those concerns that should be addressed, which it will be addressed. And then it goes on to what Lori's saying, the 1 through 7 and reviewing
No.
materials, or the review.
1 through 5,
So the steps for appeal is what to
because we're
follow.
at the appeal level.
Review and appeal process, so 1 through 5 on that end. School may choose to hear an appeal.
So,
And really in this, it says, in general, no formal hearing will be held.
right,
So what constitutes a hearing is if we go to questions to you specifically.
Well, I'd say the big piece of it is it's publicly allowing both groups essentially, which would be the
Right.
review committee being one group and the petitioners being the other group, to further stand in front of the board and kind of plead their case.
Mhm.
So,
Because following that, it says, and the school board or its designee will only review the written record materials. So with that, if there's no formal hearing as a board, what written record materials do we feel is necessary to be able to make that
What are we looking
number
number
one
1.
under?
So Shannon, what would you consider as
Second page.
part of the written record materials?
so everything that has been submitted, right? So the initial letter, anything that came from the petitioners in terms of the document with the excerpts, our decision letter. I'm trying to think what else we have on there. The reviews we have of the book. I mean, there's, I don't know, 5 or 6 things, I suppose, that would be considered kind of part of the record, right? Of like, here are all the documents collectively from the petitioners to the committee that were used to make this decision.
Would that include the individual committee members with like names out, or would it include like
No.
It's probably
No.
your outcome,
your main outcome, like the averages, like
the
what
rubric, I'm guessing.
what
is
you
the
decided on as a
letter.
group?
Right, so we use the rubric individually to help us individually guide our decision-making and for our discussion. So like each of us had a rubric sitting in front of us that we filled out prior to coming to our decision meeting after reading the book, right? And went through, we did a blind, I mean, this is as transparent as possible. We did a blind vote, right? And kind of see where we land. Are we close? Are we not close? And then we used individually the rubric to kind of go through, like as I read the book, I went through and yes, no, agree, disagree, etc. Right? So, I mean, there wasn't kind of one final grand rubric. We used it as individuals to help guide our own thought processes and decision making as we were making decisions, and then ultimately our individual recommendations for stay or go. So,
Is it possible to make a final?
yeah, I made a note. So yeah, that'd be easy enough of. Yep.
And that's where I'm getting at, because I look at the last thing on this, number 5. If the school board votes to affirm the determinations of educational experts, the matter's final. I don't understand how we can get to that point if we can't see the rubric as to how you got there. I don't want a hearing, I don't want both sides. I simply want to know, how did you guys get to the decision you're at? Does it follow our policy?
Yeah.
And then I can say, okay, yep, you did everything and your decision was right.
Yep, I hear you.
Or it goes back. That's what I'm trying to explain.
Yep.
And I don't know how I can
No, I agree
make
with
that decision without the information.
Fair enough. Yep. Yeah.
So, Shannon, when I read through these steps for appeal, they're numbered 1 through 5, but when I read them, it seems like it's more like we need to choose one of the 5. Did Trevor talk to you about this?
Well, we purposefully did not talk a lot
Okay.
because I had just give me some recommendations to help guide the board. We did not engage in what I would consider a lengthy conversation, which was intentional. I don't think those are designed to be step by step by step of step 1, step 2, step 3. I think these are just things for you to consider as you're thinking about the process that you want to develop that's going to work for you. You could morph those probably into a step 1, step 2, step 3, but the way they're written right now is not necessarily, I don't disagree with you, it's not necessarily designed that way. I think the whole intent of this document is to give you some guidelines and procedures to kind of think about of what's going to make sense for you.
Because if you look at number 2, we'll fully review and consider all previous decisions and steps. What do they mean by previous decisions? Are they,
I think that's what people are expecting.
Well, 1 and 3 kind of contradict each other too, because it's
So I was thinking
additional
we
arguments.
used number 1 and we used number 5, and that was it.
Yeah. And I think he intentionally gave you kind of a wide range of things to consider and think about, because boards are all over the place in terms of how they're navigating this, right? So trying to give you some flexibility, again, of having some discussion of what's going to work best for you.
Right here is up to the school board. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's what our policy kind of states right now.
I feel like what Lori said at that 1 and 5, that kind of goes with what our policy would say.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's the way I would like to go, personally, as an individual.
And that's just the steps, that's not, but then also keeping in mind all of those guiding principles as we're going through that.
And that's what
Oh,
we're comparing the rubric to those guiding principles,
Yes.
right?
And I think this middle
That all of those
section
steps were taken.
is 7 things in the middle, I think, are just, they weren't really anything for us to, it was just to consider.
Mhm.
And a lot of that's spelled out in our policy, isn't it?
Right.
A lot of those
Most of the stuff
points.
is pretty much, a lot
Yeah.
of this is.
I think those are, that 1 through 7 is more just like factual information,
Right.
not necessarily here are steps you should take. It's
Yeah.
just more with this topic in general, here are his recommendations.
So to me, it kind of sounds like, we're just back to, we want to keep these bullets at the top. That's what we're going to use to make sure it was followed. Then we would come back as a board and say, yes, those were, and no, those weren't, and we need either more information before we can make this
Or
final
we affirm
decision.
the decision.
Yeah.
I believe, Matt, maybe you looked up the state statutes after the last committee meeting. But these 1 through 7, I think that these are required by state law. And maybe federal law, I'm not sure.
They're in the state statutes.
Yep. So, the material strengths will be given more weight than its weaknesses. All 7 of these, I think, are in state law. Did you look those up?
I did not know, but I know some of them are. I didn't look each one of them up.
I think they are.
So in going forward, just so we can kind of keep moving, as Bruce had mentioned, if we can maybe clean this up and put this more in a process for us, and I can get that to the board prior to our next meeting, so then we can approve that process at our next meeting, and then take that process, and then hopefully use that process at the following meeting for our appeal process. I'm just thinking timeline here so we have that piece.
Okay, so we don't have any action on the agenda for this. So, otherwise I would make a motion for how we proceed. But since it's not an action item, we should maybe
It was
wait
more of just discussion.
until
Mhm.
the next meeting.
Can you just repeat that one more time? So the next 2 weeks,
So our
we'll have a
next
cleaned up
meeting,
process.
have a cleaned up process that then we can take action, that process basically is what we're agreeing on here, what we're saying, yep, this is what we're comfortable with, so we can look at that and say, yep, this is what we're gonna use as a board. So then we would vote on that at our next meeting.
We would vote on the process,
The
and then
process.
after that, we would take the
first rubric.
the first rubric and compare it to this, and then would we say at our work session, make a decision on that first one? Possible, we can talk about next time, but I mean,
The
that's
June work session.
how it would play out. We would do it after that.
We'd get the rubric, all the information ahead of time, we can review it, we come in prepared, have a discussion, take action, affirm the decision or not.
What if we don't?
What if we
We
don't
have
want?
Don't affirm it? Well, then it speaks in here, it goes back to the committee.
Or we put it back if we find there's gaps, and
If we have specific gaps, it would go back to the committee for more information, but then in our original policy, it also states that, hold on. The decision of the board shall be final.
It's all written vague enough to me, just about anything.
I know, this one is which I think that as we, the policy, I know it was brought up, but I think that this is one, now that we're into this, it does need more.
Well, so if a particular board member has questions about the rubric, does it need full board support to get an answer? Or do we just go with majority vote?
I'm not sure.
If I feel like the rubric doesn't address something good enough for me, can I ask the committee to expand on that? Or do we as a board vote and the majority says it goes back, or it just is affirmed? How do we?
Maybe that would be one of those, where we a lot of times bring it at our work session, then make the decision at the actual session, or we have it at 2 meetings, so that we could bring it, talk about those in the meantime, get everything sent back to the board if there are follow-ups like you're saying.
But we're saying we can't have that.
Yeah, how do we limit that time as well?
Well, I think when you come back to your next meeting where you're ready to have an actual discussion about the first appeal, right? I think the outcome is either you affirm the decision, you remove the book, or you have some sort of consideration that you want to have brought back to the committee for whatever that might be. I see 3 options, and that would be in line with research I'm doing with other schools as well. You either, yep, we agree with the decision, nope, we don't agree and the book is going away, or we have some more questions, etc. I think the other thing to keep in mind too, the burden of proof doesn't land on the district, right? So as you're kind of working through this and thinking about questions and those kinds of things, as you're kind of wrapping your head around this, that's an important piece to remember. Now, if you have questions, of course, happy to answer whatever it is. I can send you all the information tomorrow and you can have it moving forward.
We're talking about something.
What do you mean by the burden of proof is on a district? What do you mean by that?
So the district didn't bring about the challenge, right? So the burden of proof would be from the petitioners, not necessarily the district, right? So that is at this point now established in state law, and I'm saying in general terms, not just here in Somerset, that's the way that this has now landed in terms of in the courts and legal world, that a school district doesn't have to be the one necessarily to provide the rationale as to why we have the book or why we choose to take the book off, right?
But shouldn't we be?
I don't ask Supreme Court number 7. I'm just telling you that is the lens that is being looked at from the courts in particular. So yes, do I believe that we have to provide rationale as to why the committee decided what they decided? Absolutely. And if there's more information needed, great. But in terms of bearing the burden for yes, we have it or no, we don't, that essentially lies on the petitioner. That is what, if you were sitting in a courtroom right now, that is what a judge would tell you for this topic in particular. So I think it's an important lens to kind of remember.
I think ultimately, we're gonna end up at something similar to number 2. I don't know how you avoid it.
Well, my answer to that would be, I think that there are some things that we have in place and can put in place that we've had discussions about that I think could easily be a middle ground that could satisfy all interests and all opinions and wherever you land on this topic. So, we can dive into that further, but.
That kind of leaves that open for that, doesn't it?
Correct. And many, many schools are working collaboratively and together with everybody on both sides of this to be able to find a middle ground that can honor where every family is with the topic of what books their kids are reading. So it's happening all over the place. Of course, the other end of the spectrum is happening too, where things are really ugly, and I don't want our community to get there. I don't want our district to get there. I think there's ways that we can do this that is a very reasonable middle ground. That's what number 2 is. So.
Okay.
I guess I just have one more question, because the question I started with, I guess I didn't get an answer. Again, back to the rubric, and this burden of proof kind of thrown me for a loop. I don't think of it in that terminology at all. I simply look at it as the district, does it meet the rubric listed out here as curriculum, as reading materials for our, and just tell us that.
Right.
I'm not asking you to defend your position, I'm not asking for any of that. I'm just simply and then, so going back to that, if in 2 weeks I have a question to say, man, bullet point number 3, I'm not seeing the answer.
Yep.
Do me as one single board member, do I have the ability to ask that and hold up the entire process, or is we as a board gonna say, no, it has to be the majority, or we just move on? I guess that's what I'm looking for. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying. I can give you my opinion. My
Please.
opinion is none of us act as an individual, we act as a board. So it would come to a vote.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So a majority vote, if it, kind of like our once around the table. Perfect.
So if you had a question on a specific area, then we would have to vote as a board if we want to send that back to that group, or if we want to
And if
say,
the board says
like
no.
what Shannon's saying, those three things. If we want to say the book is gone, the book is staying, or we're going back to the committee with a question or with an area.
And what the board decides, okay, I'm good with that.
Yeah, and I think if there's multiple on there, these are the 4 things we need addressed, and then they would respond, and then the next time we say, all right, this is where we are. Here's their response.
Okay.
And I don't think, like you said, it's not a hearing, it's just,
Great.
here's the information we asked.
That is
And we're
great.
good.
I think that's great. I just want to clarify one thing. So you said the word curriculum. These are not, this isn't curriculum.
I
This is
know,
library book. Okay.
Yes,
But that has also been a
yes,
big topic, so I
yes.
just want to publicly indicate that these are library books,
Library
not
books.
curriculum. But-
So is there such a
Yes.
thing as saying, okay, the book is staying with these criteria in place? That, you know, if a child is under 16, which is the state statute, this, and this would happen if, can we do stipulations to that, the book is staying?
As a board, you certainly could. Yep.
But if you saw and we all will see this, the letter that Shannon, or the committee Shannon sent on behalf of the committee, some of those accommodations were offered that, you know, if a parent objects to his or her child reading that book, there is information, Shannon, if I'm misstating something, please help, that can be an Infinite Campus or some other such system.
Right.
So that they can't check it out.
Right, that if
So
they
that's
try.
already in place.
Yeah, yep, it could be.
So-
Mhm.
It's not what it was offered.
Right.
It's not
And
in place.
And if it's helpful, because some of these I don't have off the top of my head. I mean, I'm happy to bring to the next board meeting what other schools have done, which would be considered middle ground, which is exactly what you're talking about. Of what systems can be in place to help, again, honor wherever you are on this topic of restriction versus no restriction. There are schools everywhere that are doing this. I'm happy to just bring examples as a board you can consider. If there's something you want to talk further about, great. If not, cool, then I can, no big deal. But there are ways to do this that, you know, and I think the other piece of that though is, you know, as a committee, I think we've already shown, you know, the diligence of trying to do this the right way. It's taking a long time because we're trying to do this right, because, you know, in looking at the 26 books remaining, I have no idea. There's books on, most of the books left on there are books that I have not read for sure, right? So I want to make sure as a committee that we are going through each of these and reading these in depth. Because I don't know, there certainly could be books on there that even as a committee, we decide like, okay, maybe these aren't meeting the standard of what we want in our library. Great, awesome. Though, I mean, that's part of why we have the process. But with this many books, this is going to take a long time. And in the meantime, as I said, there are some other ways that districts have navigated this, that no matter where you sit on this spectrum, that could kind of honor all of those opinions and where you are, so. Anyway.
Stop gaps in place.
Yeah.
Can be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Okay. Good.
so are we comfortable moving forward with that? Okay,
So Lacey, you're gonna do that?
yes.
Okay.
Great. And I will send that out prior to the next meeting.
So what are you gonna send out?
Just this cleaned up, kind of what we, those things, but take out how we kind of said 1 and 5 would be more ours, like
Yeah.
take out 2, 3,
Okay.
4, so it's a
Okay.
little bit more laid out.
Thank you.
Okay, then moving on to our policy update from our policy committee. Would someone from our policy committee want to take this over?
I can start, I guess, with it. So we met last week. Sheree was there, Lori was there, Shannon, myself, Chris from Neola. I don't know, I guess my opinion is I don't know if we need to go through each one of these individually. Everyone has the Google Doc. We've had it for quite some time, actually. It was cleaned up live, thanks to Alicia, as we went through each one, policy by policy. So you'll see any strike-throughs or color changes, and there should be a guide that tells you what the colors mean. You have an opportunity to add comments on the right side. Everyone here is a commenter. A couple of us are editors, so you can add comments if you have questions. And then on board docs, Chris also sat here from Neola and updated each one as well. So what is on Neola's or on board docs should match the Google Doc. And I think we got all of the punctuation and grammatical things cleaned up. So I guess it's up to all of us if we want to go through each one individually or just have a conversation as a whole, if there's anything in particular.
I have a question on 8450. What made you take out COVID as a communicable disease? Why didn't you pick measles or something else? Why COVID? That is a communicable disease, but you took it off the list of communicable diseases.
Sure.
It's been removed from a lot of different areas where they're saying it's not, we don't have to have the protocols in place anymore.
Well, it is a communicable disease.
I'm
still getting people in the clinic with positive COVID tests.
It was simply in response to the communicable disease piece and the county opinions and regulations. That's where it came from.
And I still don't believe that you can decide whether or not you want to follow a state statute.
So what is the state statute regarding COVID right now?
I don't know what the state statute is regarding COVID right now, but in your notes here, you have something, the board may follow the state statutes. And you crossed all that out, but a state statute has to be followed. You don't get a choice. You were talking about state statutes earlier.
I don't think it was a statute part of it, it was the recommendations.
Well, on here, it says the board may follow all state statutes, and then you crossed all that out, so they don't even have to, I guess.
That was all addressed when we went through this the first time.
Yeah, I was objected to it the first time, too.
Yeah, okay.
And I still do, so I'm just telling you that I still object to that.
What sentence is that, or what paragraph is that, roughly?
4th.
And the coronavirus is in the 2nd. So I still don't agree with that.
Well, for shall include those communicable diseases, if you listed out every communicable disease, I mean,
Well, it
taking
wasn't.
that out.
That's the only one they took out, though. They didn't take out, we don't have a lot of measles around here or stuff like that. They didn't take that one out.
But how many communicable diseases are there?
There's like many, 20
Yeah.
some, whatever, that the CDC has listed. That are
Because then
not
it also
here.
says, and others designated by the Wisconsin Department of Health. I think that covers it, doesn't it?
Yes, but why take coronavirus out? That's what I didn't
Okay.
understand, is why take that out? Why not just leave it in there and leave the sentence the way it is?
I'd be in favor of taking them all out. Or just, they're listed there as designated by the Wisconsin Department of Health. I mean, casual contact communicable disease, do we need to list every one?
I think they listed the ones that are particularly prevalent in school-age children.
Yeah.
Okay. Is COVID-19?
Yes, it is prevalent. Strep is, COVID-19, there's a lot of it around still.
Let me ask you this, keeping it in or taking it out, does it make a matter either way?
It probably doesn't, but I just wondered why they picked on coronavirus.
And it's the discussion that day was just the way that everything has changed, from the county to the state guidelines, the way everyone has responded to it. That's all.
Marge, I expressed the same concern at the policy committee. I didn't understand why it was being removed. There's really no reason to remove it. And it doesn't mean that COVID-19 is not a communicable disease, so it would still be covered as others designated, but I had the same question.
Yeah, why just take one out?
Well, and looking at the list, I'm surprised strep isn't in there. I think
It is.
strep
It is, it's
So it
in there.
is.
It's in there.
Strep infection.
Oh, strep infections, okay, I read right past that, okay.
Are other people
Any-
in favor of keeping that? Because I'm
Well-
fine taking it out.
And I guess my concern is that we just went so far into the weeds with it when we had it, that you have to be gone this many days, and if you're exposed to it, then your siblings have to be gone, and there was just so much surrounding coronavirus, and we're not seeing that anymore. It's not as, you have one member of family with all the other members getting direct exposure, and nobody else gets sick. My
They
kids,
do.
no, they don't. My
Maybe
family
not
is
at
a
your
classic,
house, but I see them in the clinic all the time. the
but
whole
many
family.
families don't.
Well,
Just like my son and daughter could share the same piece of food, and Maria would get strep and Jacob wouldn't. I
so
mean,
then why
there's
not
just-
take strep out?
But my point is, I don't think that it deserves any more pointed, that this is such a horrible disease any more than anything else. Yes, there are a lot of people that got very sick from it. Yes, there are families that everybody did get sick, but there are families that didn't.
Yeah, and there's people that died from it too.
Yeah.
So just as
Just
the
like
other
the-
ones, but why just take that one out? I didn't get that.
I think it's covered under others. If
Did
you
you-
feel differently, we can keep it in.
Did you put a comment in the Google Doc of that by chance?
No, I didn't.
Do you mind, just so that as we look in the next
Well-
2 weeks, just as we look at the process, just make sure a note is there that you'd like to see back in? Anything else on that one? Was there anything on any of the others?
I just put a note in with the attendance piece, just if the guardians needs to be taken out. Because it said parents and guardians, it's referenced a lot of times, and I just,
Did we miss that?
Which,
Possible.
No, Lori, it's not possible.
I'm
Well,
with you,
You know
Lori.
how many
No, no,
guardians
no,
we
no.
took out? We
no,
took
you
them all
did
out.
take them out. You did,
Oh.
but that was my question, is why why
Oh.
guardians was taken out.
Oh, because in the list of definitions, parents is defined as parents, foster parents, guardians.
Okay, that answers my question.
So
That
all
was my
references
question.
to all these are,
Okay.
yeah, it's just parent.
But Matt, I did go through the Google Doc a second time, and I did find a couple other little grammatical things, and I did make comments on them, so they're on the side there for anyone who wants to see them.
Alicia, are you the best to make those changes?
You want to go through each one of them?
Well, no, I think just in the next 2 weeks, and then just make sure it gets to Chris too, so that his matches.
Do you all agree on those
It's
changes?
nothing that changes any meaning. For example, it says, it uses the word assure, and it should be ensure. It uses a plural instead of a singular,
Mhm.
stuff like that.
Yeah,
If it
I'm good
doesn't
with
change
it.
any
We can
meaning,
sit
then
down
I think-
together.
Yeah, I'm good with that if you guys are okay.
And then you'll get that to Chris, or do you want one of us to get it to Chris?
I can give it to Chris.
Just to make sure that they both match by,
Yeah.
in 2 weeks.
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you.
I had another just question about the policy. Sorry, and I didn't put a note just because I didn't wanna.
Which one?
Which one?
It's the attendance, 5200, the absent excuse required. I just, and maybe this is maybe even me more as a parent, is that we have kids call in a single absence, but then it also states to have, I'm sorry, I've written an absence excuse required. Is that by like state law that they need that, or is that? So in addition to a phone call, you also need an absent excuse.
No, not, I'm scrolling to try and find it here.
I don't think you can ask people if what they had or were sick from or something like that. I
Well,
know
that
ours-
was my, and that's where, that's
Yeah.
exactly, Marge, why I'm asking it, because I just
Yeah.
actually had this as a parent, because I called in my child, but then they're
Yeah.
also asking for additional, so I was just curious if you have that absence line, do you need a doctor's note?
Well, some of them need doctor's notes, but on the notes that we write out, they don't have they had the flu or they had whatever. They just say that they're under my care and they were not there on
Okay.
such and such a day.
I guess
So
just,
were you asking about where it says investigate the cause? What exactly are you asking about, Lacey? I'm
well, it
confused.
says, like absent excuse required, that an excuse is required. So if I say, any verbal statement shall be documented by a district employee, the board reserves the right to verify such statements and to investigate the cause of each. So as a parent, if I call into the absence line and I say, my child is sick, then is it required that then I have an excuse that's
No.
accompanied?
No.
No, it's just that the school reserves the right to investigate if needed. For example, if you're looking at possible truancy
Yep.
or.
Okay, that was just my question, because I
you know,
just didn't know if
excessive
that wording is kind of,
absenteeism.
and I've kind of, yeah. Perfect, thanks, that was all my only. And then I had one more question on 7440, the public access to school facilities. Sorry, I'll be fast. I know we've been here a long time. And I didn't put it in because I just wanted to ask it. So, I'm scrolling down, my apologies. This is a big document. I'm not there yet, but it said, building, hold on. All persons other than students and building staff shall check in with the main office of the building and shall complete a visitor log. So building staff, if somebody from another building were to come in, that they would need to check in the main office.
So a
And-
non-staff member?
Well, it's because it says building staff, so does that mean district staff or building staff? And I'm also gonna put that to like, if a board member comes in, we are required to check in at in the office.
Yes, so a board member would not be an employee, you're a regular person coming off the
Yep.
street, right? Yes.
And building staff, if somebody from another, I just didn't know if it should be district staff or building staff.
I think it's fine the way it
Okay.
is, yeah, but I think it's just semantics.
Okay.
And students from another building are required to log in when they go. We have a lot of high school students who
That go to that.
regularly go to the elementary school or the middle school, and they are required to log in every time in the main office. As a matter of fact, their badge wouldn't work to get in the door, so they have to get buzzed into the main office. So
Perfect.
the same thing with staff. If their ID badge doesn't work in another building, they have to go through the main office. Each staff member's ID badge only works for the building they're supposed to be in.
Perfect. Yep, that was all I was asking. And to just clarify us as board members too, that our role is as a community, like we would have to go through those processes to check in. Perfect.
Anything else?
That was all my questions.
The only other thing I'll just note, just for the whole board, is we did pull 2 or 3 policies off of this, so.
Just one.
Just one in the end? Okay, one came off. So it's in the Google Doc, but it's not here because
I needed a little more time to work with the admin team.
the admin team. Okay,
Yep.
so it'll come back.
Yep.
June work session,
Okay, very good.
and I think it was 5410. And it
Yeah,
had to
I have it in my
do
office,
with,
but yeah.
Promotion.
The promotion, retention,
Okay.
yep.
Just, yeah, so you saw it in the Google Doc, it's not here, that's why. It'll be back.
Okay. Any other questions or comments with policies? Thank you, policy committee and Lori, for going through all that. That's a lot of work.
So just so I'm clear, I'm making any grammatical changes presented by Lori. I am not making any changes to 8450, right?
Yep,
Because
she'll
more
put it-
discussion next time before voting on the policies?
I think so, yeah, as long as Marge puts a note there, and then we can look at it and think about it, and then discuss it. And if we want to make a last minute change, we can.
Okay. That sounds good.
And then you'll make sure Chris follows.
Yes.
Perfect. With the grammatical stuff.
Thank you, Alicia.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to our topics for action. Is there a motion to recommend that we approve the personnel update and the athletics personnel update?
I'll make a motion to approve number 12, A and B, as presented on the agenda.
Is there a second?
No second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Looking around once around the table, Laura, you started last time, so I'll have you start again.
Band concert going on right now. Maybe let's go down there.
Yeah, we used to try to schedule, I don't know, maybe with all the snow days it was impossible, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's unfortunate that we're missing that.
That's it.
There's a lot more concerts going on, and Alicia has put all of them in the Spartan Scoop. There's like 5 of them, I think, in May.
Yep, a lot going on.
Pat?
Art show at the library. I know some of the middle school students have stuff there. So my son does, so that's going on. And then if there's somebody else that I guess has the same question, so the public comment regarding the policy and the LADE system, LADE. I guess I'd like some more information on that, if you
Sure.
have that.
I do.
Because I guess I'm racking my brain and I'm not finding when there was a policy change regarding this, and maybe I'm just not finding it. So if there's someone else here that seconds that, I would like to see that.
It wouldn't be a policy change.
Okay, I thought she spoke of a policy change to this.
It's not.
It's not a policy change.
Okay, very good.
No, but,
Well,
yep,
if I can get some more information, I'd appreciate
yep,
it.
for sure. Yep.
I would agree.
I think it's a good idea that we bring this back to an agenda. So I'll second your,
Thank you.
Okay.
That's it.
What do I have? That was one of mine. And happy Principal Appreciation Day and Teacher Appreciation Week. So thank you to our awesome staff members. And that's, I just am also, I kind of put, but we have already discussed it, but just look at that, those middle ground. And I know that you've racked all different things, but just kind of any other options or other things that other districts have been to see some of those. I know this is happening in a lot of different places, and I think just ways that they've been handled, if anybody else would. I mean, I know it's there, but, and I've been trying to search and things too, so. Cherie?
I would just encourage people to be kind on social media. And the book review stuff is a very, very hot topic. And it's created a lot of division. There's a lot of strong opinions, both directions. And name calling, attacking, there is no place for that in our district. There's no place for that in our society. It's bullying when we are calling somebody out by name or because of their opinion, and it should not be tolerated. So if anybody is experiencing that on social media, please, be the one standing up. I'm hardly on it, so I'm not there to see and personally can't make an opinion on it anyway from a board standpoint, but we received a very heartbreaking email from one of our members of our community, and this should not be happening. I don't care what side you are on the fence with that, but please be kind and allow everyone to have their own opinion.
Marge?
Nothing.
Okay, Lori?
you did a great job of covering everything, thank you.
So moving on, we will start our board retreat. Maybe we'll take 5 minutes, use the restroom, we'll turn off live streaming, get some water, grab a little, I don't know, we'll bring fun snacks. And we'll come back at 8 o'clock.